I'm going to start this off by saying if you don't have time to give me watching this video, I would suggest that you just save it in your watch later list for when you do have time. Um, because I'm going to take us on a bit of a journey today in this video and the things that I want to show you and say. And yeah, I know there's a little bit of NS, safe for work stuff on my Facebook. I definitely did try to hack the algorithm um, because I wanted it to give me what I wanted. I wanted it to serve me. I wanted it to be my master, but I need to do this. Despite that comment, I want you to see this. This is a donation that was from yours truly. I realize that I'm leaking some stuff that information wise that I don't want in this image though, but F it for the moment. I'm just trying to put something together and cobble it together quickly. You see in the quarter, yeah, obviously I like the erotica. So whatever, sue me. I'm guilty. That's my mea culpa. But this was a donation to Girls Rising, and they're a group of organization that's fighting to get women into the music business. And I had a request that if I could have wrote to them, it would have been nice when it came to making that donation because I would have told them there's another video that I have no problem linking in the underbar as I produce this, but my taste in music borrows a lot from this particular thing, which is lost genres, EBM, and we're talking. No, we don't mean EDM. We mean electronic body music, basically. And I'm going to put that in the underbar to this particular thing, video that I've produced. So you can see this. These are notes that I'm keeping. Um, so the other video that I watched, but this is a kind of a response to a feminist video that was put forward, okay? And she got a bunch of hate comments and not helpful that she was dunked on and hated on saying anything about Richard Stallman. But I watched this video, which is Kelsey Merkley, Horizontal Hostility, and she says that she created an app, uh, she claims that she's part of Slack's developers. That's what her space is. And she's saying that it was, a developer on there where she's trying to be more inclusive and everything, and that she found that that IRC, sorry, was clunky and confusing and didn't, and it lacked inclusivity because of that. And all I could think is, well, maybe if you had stuck with IRC with a little bit of tenacity, maybe you would have figured it out. But it's not all that complicated. But especially if somebody's smart enough to actually develop code. I mean, I don't understand in that regard. And but there's a bit of a problem with Slack as an application, and I'm gonna go over this, and I find a really great article that really shows exactly why there's a problem with Slack and why it's bad code, and why the code on Slack is just bad. It's inefficient. It's bloat basically. It's bad code, and that is this article. Please stop using Slack. All right, I'm gonna read. It's up here, and this was a great post that went out in 2015. I appreciate that I'm late to the party. I get it, but sorry. I mean, sometimes that just happens. Sometimes I don't see these things on time. Let's see. Does he have? You, come on, computer's being a bit slow today. Do you have a? No, no. Yeah, you have an RSS. All right. Slack. The problems with Slack are that it's closed source. It has only one client. Errata is at the bottom of this article, so we go to the bottom of the article and we check out the errata. Um, there are some problems with two. I don't see it, but I do see this, and that changes things too. Slack is shutting down the IRC and XMP gateway. That's kind of sad. It's closed source. It's a walled garden. It requires users to have a different tab open for each project they want to be involved in. That's a massive problem, and that's a bigger thing than it actually, turns out to be. I know this. I don't even know what Heroku actually is, but it requires the Heroku hack to get open registration. That last one's a real stinker. Slack is not a tool built for open source projects to use for communication with their user base. It's a tool built for teams and is ill suited for this use case. In fact, Slack has gone on the record saying that they cannot support this sort of use case. It's great that people are putting Slack to use, but unfortunately, those communities are not something that we have the capacity to support, given the growth within our existing business. Well, actually, I think that most businesses should fire them and cancel their subscriptions and go over to IRC Cloud. It just works better, you know. She basically said her critique of IRC was that it was her statement was that it was clunky, you know, basically, and it was confusing. This, you know, in particular, like there are some things you should note about it. Over in the old days, we would have told people to use a paste bin basically for code, but you can put code snippets in it. Um, you know, you can share snippets of text and code just by pasting. You can embed videos, images, GIFs, and social media links. You can choose a profile picture, and they support emojis. So it's IRC now. It's being IRC is being upgraded for the modern world. You know, in the modern internet era, and being brought forward to the thread. You know, I know that I got these comments about LibreOffice's design philosophy being 30 years out of date, but I really hate Microsoft Teams, by the way, because it enables the bosses to actually, you know, monitor how productive their employees are actually being. Just, you know, so you know, like if you're using it, you should be aware of that. I'm so glad I don't like have a job that makes heavy use of it, you know. So I like I like selling on Amazon and everything, and I use LibreOffice, and I still am in that direction, you know. But I today I don't I've practiced a little bit writing code in like Python, and I'm interested in becoming a developer sometime, you know, in the future. But I've got other, you know, things to take care of in the meantime, you know, as I prepare and that, you know. But the thing is that I know what he's talking about when it comes to all this stuff, and you know the trouble with this and you know Slack as a program is that it's bloat basically. I would say that another problem that this developer forgot to pull forward, or a better way to put it, would have just been to say that, you know, Slack is bloat because it requires users to have a different browser, you know, window open in their browser, you know, for each project that they want to be involved in, and that's a problem, you know, with the way that Slack is actually uh, cobbled together. I often hear that IRC is dead, and that's not true. Even my dad pokes fun at me for using a 30-year-old protocol, but not after I pointed out that he still uses HTTP. Despite the usual stick from the Valley, old is not necessarily a synonym for bad. And you know, the Valley, a lot of people in the Valley have the wrong mentality, unfortunately, when it comes to this sort of thing, because it's like they've got this slant that's like newer is always better, and it's just not actually true in reality. And if you even think about it for just a little bit, you'd realize that the fatal flaw with that mode of thinking, which is just when code is older, it's had time, you know, like when you're on the bleeding edge, right? When code's brand new, it's more likely to be error ridden and have problems. And when developers are new, they get better at their craft over time, you know, like they get better and better and better at what they're trying to do and trying, you know, you wouldn't expect a newbie programmer to write, you know, incredibly efficient code. I mean, but you know, the problem is that you should always have kind of an eye as a developer towards performance and how, you know, fast your programs actually execute on people's devices, and that doesn't appear to have been a concern with Slack and its developers. They just cobbled it together, you know, incredibly quickly. And there this person makes a really knockout case, and I can't find a really solid way of arguing with it, you know, where they, you know, there are still users on it, you know, there are quite a few of them on Freenode at the time of this writing, nearly 90,000. But if you want precisely how much it was, it's on the screen. It's 87,762, not N62, 62 users currently online at the time of writing on Freenode. You know, and that's just Freenode alone. There's 10,293 people on OFTC, 22,384 people on Risen, In other words, it's still going strong, and I put a lot more faith in something that's been going full speed ahead since the 80s than in a Silicon Valley fad startup. Now, this is this is big, you know. I mean, I'm sorry to the Slack person and developer for the things that I'm saying here, because you know, if you're a developer, like, welcome to the community of people that writes code, I guess. You know, I'm interested in joining it too at some point, you know. um I'm not saying, anything in that direction. I think that Richard Stallman's commentary was a massive problem. I mean, we have this phase of of life that we call adolescence, and our society has constructed this idea of adolescence, and it isn't mistaken. I'm saying that our civilization is right, to declare that adulthood begins at 18. Perhaps even it should move that forward a little bit further than it does. Because 18-year-olds really aren't ready in a lot of ways for the modern world usually. But when I say all this, I'm just, you know, basically, this is what he says, and when you look at it, it's hard to argue with what he basically says. He says we use IRC at Linode, and even for non-technical people, it works great. And if you want to reduce the barrier to entry for non-technicals, set up something like Shout instead. And the truth of the matter is that I found myself reading that, and if you're trying to make it simpler and reducing the barrier for non-technicals, wouldn't this program in particular make sense as the way to go about, setting it all up? You solve your group communication problems once and for all. Stop scheduling wasteful meetings and getting bogged down in email and work on it in real time. You know, like IRC does that, and the other great thing about this particular uh, public application is that if you're happy with using your existing IRC client, we provide a bouncer interface to let you keep using it. You know, connect to any IRC out there, and even IRCs ever out there, and even Slack workspaces. And I'm sitting here looking at this IRC Cloud thing, and I think IRC Cloud is much better than Slack. And I'm a little bit like, nostalgia shapes my perspective. I used to use the XCC bots to get files. I traded binaries on Usenet when I was a kid. I love IRC. I had distro access for a while because I filled those XDC bots over FTP. I was volunteering myself to fill them with files that I got in other places, and just up filled their bots with my files, and got distro access to the latest stuff. And it was great, when I was doing that stuff. And if I was a way to get back into it, maybe I'll do it again. But yeah, um, so I know about XCC, and I've been doing that kind of thing since I was like 13. And I'm looking at this, and like the video that she put forward, and it's like RMS did something and said something problematic. And I'm following a lot of feminists on Twitter who are saying and are having a negative reaction to Richard Stallman. And I'm like, woe is me to argue against anything that they have to say, you know. But the one thing that I'm holding out as far as reservation on is the programs themselves. She called IRC clunky, and confusing. I think, like, if she had just stuck with it, she probably would have figured it out, but she was busy and had other things to do. That's what I think. And this, however, is an IRC client. And like I said, if you want the persistent sessions, what's great about IRC2 is that it's modular in that kind of way. You don't have to have persistent sessions like you have on Slack, but if you need it, there's this wonderful program called ZNC where you may find and publish information about ZNC or an advanced IRC bouncer that is left connected to an IRC client that can disconnect and reconnect without losing the chat session. Feel free to update pages which you think are improvable, and don't hesitate to ask for help. And so what ultimately is a BNC? BNC is a bouncer connection network. Is a piece of software that's used to relay traffic and connections in computer networks, much like a proxy. A BNC allows a user to hide the original source of the user's connection, providing privacy. Yeah, I kind of knew this from back in the day, and an ability to route traffic through a specific location. A BNC can also be used to hide the true target to which a user connects. That's great. You basically are able to get anonymity on IRC in that kind of way. I've known about this for a while because of that. I've always had an eye towards anonymity. Always. You know, um, but so they've got the whole thing put forward in the model in this, but this is modular. You don't have to use this, but if you want it, you can get it and put it on the whole thing, and then you'll have persistence. And ZNC is, you know, um, uh, the source tarball is available there. I'm not on Linux at the moment, so I probably shouldn't grab it. But yeah, I would if I set up an IRC server of my own, I would definitely take that feature. On the thing. I'm thinking about installing one of those IRCDs just to learn myself, to get some hands-on experience running an IRCD myself, because at some point I would, with my income levels rising, I would love to basically put a server like together after having gained those skills and like join like Risen, and create a Risen server for them at some point. And then if I did that and to join the Risen network with an IRC server of my own, I would have IRC opera status, and that's basically the whole reason why I'd want to do it. Basically, I want power. You know, that's the truth. I'm power hungry. That's why. I love having power. That's what it's all about. So I love these particular things. But yeah, anyways, so the problem, in a big way though, is just that this is the better way to. They're saying set up something like Shout, for non-technical people. And what is Shout? It's depreciated, so the lounge, will help this be inclusive to. And you can see like the lounge up here, which is what he was talking about, which is a self-hosted web IRC client. So you've got a web page, and you'll have this, which is an attempt to make IRC less confusing for people. You know, you're able to put that up in that direction. You know, this journey that we're on, that we're seeing all this stuff though. I mean, we're seeing all these little ways that you can connect this particular thing, and this is because this technology is 30 years old, and that means that there's been time for the libraries to be developed, and people should develop a code and extensions for it, and do all kinds of things with IRC over and over and over again, improving it all over the place. And yet, what we're doing and appear to be doing is heading towards a world where people are adopting Slack instead. And Slack is bad. It's a bunch of hot garbage. And what I mean is not as an insult to these guys, but like, in essence, this phrase I'm writing a notepad: performance was not a major concern. When it came to the developer didn't really care about the speed at which these codes executed, about being minimalistic, about the drain on resources that their program would be. Like, a browser tab takes up a lot on the computer of memory. It takes up a lot of RAM. to have a browser tab open, so when they're not in use, what do you do with them? You usually close them down, you know, like, so. And one of the great, like one of the things that's really great about IRC, like I said, is that if you want persistence, you can get it, but you don't have to have it. Like, modular features make, an application superior. Rather than making features mandatory, making them optional is inherently a superior design philosophy. It's what makes it so fucking great in what it's put forward. And that's the thing. That's what's so great about this. And when people quip and they make fun of you because of this idea that, oh, that's a 30-year-old piece of technology, that's awesome. And it's awesome that it's over 30 years old, because and it makes it so exciting that it's that old. Because old code is code that's had time to iron out all the bugs and viruses, like, not the bugs, but all the problems that will be in the code, like all the errors and everything else. Whereas newer code on the bleeding edge may have may have major problems in it that were not caught by the developers on time, even if it's corporate code. This happens all the fucking time with corporate code. you know Somebody pays them a good amount of money to get it right, and they still manage to screw it up because nobody's fucking perfect. So I just wanted to say that, like, we've got this bias, like they want us to be on this, update the moment the updates are available, and they complain about that sort of thing. But the trouble is, just if you're one of those people with experience, you're delaying updates because things go wrong when code is brand new. Reliability becomes hampered in a situation where code is new. And if you've got mission critical devices, you're gonna, like, most businesses will have like a test machine set up so that they can test the updates and make sure that they work with them. And then they're gonna have, on the other end of thing, and their setup and all the things that it needs to plug into and be able to interact with all over the place and everything. And all those are issues. But the trouble here, in such a huge way, is that there's this idea that new is always better, and it's not a synonym for better. And that's the problem, is that older code, like old, the reality is pretty much the opposite when it comes to computers. It's like old is a synonym for better, new is a synonym for bad. Like, because old is more stable and has had time to iron out all the bugs that are in the code, whereas new has problems, because it hasn't had time to discover all the bugs that are in it and develop and patch against them. So if IRC is a 30-year-old protocol, that's good, because that protocol has probably been pretty heavily mined against, people were probably seeking bugs in it for a very, very long time, which means that they've been discovered and patched against, you know so, this is great, great, great stuff. She said that she did not, you know, get IRC, and that it was confusing, and that some of the things that they solved was being able to share code snippets, instead of using pastebin and emojis. She didn't bring this up, but she said that it was clunky and confusing. I want to know, from her personally, if she's watching this, do you think that this is confused? Does this look clunky and confusing to you? Are you not able to intuitively figure this image out? Is it not intuitively obvious to you at this scale of things? This is a great, client. I think that if people are hiring Slack, they should switch to this. I really do. I think this is a much better program than Slack actually is. And it's better in a huge way because like close this out, close even this out. I don't need any of this, but like as Drew pointed out, you know, in his article, and here we go. He says, in short, I'd really appreciate it if we quit using Slack like this. It's not appropriate for FOSS projects, but that's not the key statement. What's so the one thing that I want you to completely zero in on is here. I would much rather join your channel with the client I already have running. That way I'm more likely to stick around after I get help with whatever issue I came to you for and contribute back by helping others as I idle in your channel until the end of time. On Slack, I leave as soon as I'm done getting help because tabs in my browser are precious resources and they're precious real estate. And yet, what we have, is this, and then there's some feedback that was put on it. Slack provides an IRC bridge that lets you connect to Slack with an IRC client, but feedback, Slack is shutting down the IRC and XMP gateway. So it's gone now. Slack has several clients that use the API. That being said, there are fewer of them and fewer platforms than IRC clients, and there are more libraries around IRC than there are for Slack. Also, the bigger issue is that I already have an IRC client, which I use for hundreds of FOSS projects that use IRC, and I don't want to add a Slack client for one or two projects. Gitter is bad for the same reason Slack is. Please don't use it over IRC. Check out IRC version 3.net. IRC Cloud is really cool and it solves all of the problems, and that's how I found out about this and found this. And so I would recommend that teams switch. I fire, Slack, switch over, and you'll have the benefit of the fact that the person that cobbled it together wasn't, basically a soy dev. I mean, I don't like that term, by the way. Despite having used it here on this 20-minute, ending to this video, but how do we define a soy dev? I mean, I would point you in the direction of watching Luke Smith and Mental Outlaws videos to figure that out. But basically, if I had to hobble a guess at how they would define these terms, I would say what a soy dev is a developer that doesn't make performance a major concern when it comes to this. And these guys have talked about this before. They talk about how old code is often better because in the old days we didn't have as many resources as we do today. A developer will come in and will be like, oh, we're able to cobble code together, like we're like, fuck it, don't worry about performance, just get something together as quickly as possible. Yeah, that hurt my ears. I have a sticky pad app up, but now and it deleted my note. The little little bastard actually deleted my note. Like open. No, you didn't actually save it. You thought you did, but you didn't actually succeed at that. Yeah, I have to put this together, so I don't waste any of your time, But yeah, this program, mm, you're seeing my process about how I put this together. All underbar. Slack is garbage. It's a garbage application. I'm sorry, but it happens to be true. I'm not trying to trash you. Your tool just sucks. And it sucks for the reason for all these reasons. It sucks because, you know, in order to actually use it, you have to have a browser session open for each and every project, you know? And that's a massive ordeal. It uses way too many resources on people's computers. Each and every browser tab is a precious resource. And what are you guys doing? You're basically trying to make developers have to have every freaking possible browser tab open, for every project that they're part of. and Slack is taking over, and that's the problem, and that's why this video was produced. RMS, maybe problematic person. What he said and the things that he said were concerning, but it's IRC is still a much better program.